In the second part of our discussion on air pollution and climate, we're shifting our focus towards the climate systems and how they work, how human action feeds into it, and what the consequences are going to look like around the world. Today's lecture centers on four main themes: the greenhouse effect, carbon emissions from fossil fuels, global impacts of climate change, and our responses, both in slowing the problem and adjusting to it. The greenhouse effect is a completely natural process, and without it, Earth would be far too cold to support human life. Gases like water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide trap heat inside the atmosphere, keeping the planet warm enough for liquid water and stable ecosystems. The issue we face today is that human activities have strengthened that natural system. And they do this by burning fossil fuels, clearing forests, and producing agricultural emissions. By doing that, they've increased the concentration of those gases. Climate scientists study this using tools like satellite observations, historical air bubbles that are trapped in ice cores, and sophisticated computer models. These records show a clear rise in both global temperatures and greenhouse gas levels, a pattern that matches what we would expect to see when greenhouse effect is actually intensified. This diagram illustrates how enhanced greenhouse effect works. Sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere and warms the planet's surface. Normally, some of that heat radiates back out into space. But with more greenhouse gases present, more of that heat gets trapped and increases the warming of that surface of the Earth. We can imagine this as though we were trying to stay warm on a cold day and we decided to grab a blanket. That's going to keep us warm and pretty well regulated. But if we added another blanket and we didn't change anything else, we didn't turn on the heater, we didn't add a space heater, we didn't grab our cats and throw them under the blankets and snuggle them to steal their body warmth. We just added another layer. That's the same process. You're going to end up with more heat trapped than you would with that single blanket. Fossil fuels, which include coal, oil, and natural gas, formed from ancient plants and animal matter over millions of years ago. They contain carbon that was once stored safely underground. When we burn them to produce electricity, power our vehicles, or run industrial processes, that carbon gets released as carbon dioxide, which is the primary driver of modern climate change. Since pre industrial times, CO2 levels have risen from about 280 parts per million to more than 420 parts per million today. That's a dramatic change in a very short time when we consider the entire geological timeline. Many of our everyday activities contribute to this rise. Electricity generation still depends heavily on coal and natural gas. Transportation from cars and trucks and cargo ships, airplanes is another major source. Deforestation also plays a big role because cutting down forests releases that stored carbon, and removing those trees prevents those trees from absorbing the CO2 that we're talking about. Together, these activities have created a rapid and measurable shift in Earth's atmospheric chemistry. Climate change affects every part of the world, and the pace of this change is increasing. As global temperatures rise, glaciers and ice sheets melt, adding more water to the ocean. Warmer water expands, which pushes the sea level even higher. This creates real risk for low-lying coastal areas, from the Pacific Islands all the way to major US cities like Miami and New Orleans. High temperatures also fuel strong storms. They create longer and more dangerous heat waves, and they extend droughts and heavier flooding. These aren't just environmental concerns, they directly impact our food supply and public health and access to clean water. And the oceans, excess carbon dioxide is making the water more acidic, which is already damaging coral reefs, including Florida's own reef tract. On land and in the sea, many species are shifting their ranges or struggling to survive in changing conditions. And although climate change affects everyone, developing nations and coastal communities are often hit the hardest, even though they may be contributing the least amount of damage. Mitigation focuses on reducing the greenhouse gases we release into the atmosphere. The goal is to slow climate change and limit the magnitude of future impact. This can include transitioning to renewable energy sources like solar and wind, designing more efficient buildings and transportation systems, and protecting or restoring forests that naturally absorb CO2. For example, if we look at creating walkable cities, they can dramatically cut transportation related emissions. When neighborhoods are designed so people can safely walk or bike to stores, schools, and the workplace, fewer short car trips are needed, which reduces fuel use, lowers air pollution, and supports healthier, more connected communities. A lot of the time, it can also be more cost effective. If anyone has had to drive around the Tampa Bay area and has gotten stuck in traffic, you probably understand this. When you're running your car and sitting idle in traffic, you're still using gas. And if gas prices go up, that means more money out of your own pocket. I've been to several places that had excellent public transportation systems where I didn't have to take a vehicle anywhere and I could still get around the area in 30 minutes. Montreal had an excellent public transportation system where I was using the bus and the metro. They have a single card that you can use for that. I've been to several places throughout France that had fantastic public transportation. Some of the best that I have seen. Again, you can use buses and the metro. Vancouver has buses. They have a sky rail. They actually have a water taxi where you can just walk on. It looks like a big, huge waiting room and it floats across the water. All of that is on the same transportation ticket. You can get a pass that costs less than a tank of gas and it lasts for the entire month. France had an excellent train system. Actually, all of Europe has an excellent train system. So if you need to do long term travel, rather than getting to the airport 2 hours early, waiting, having to go through security, it's a big hassle. You can get on the train within 5 minutes of arriving and then relax when you get to your destination. So you're reducing those carbon emissions, but at the same time, you're saving your own money. And it gives you a little bit more of a work life balance because you don't have to worry about which car is coming from which direction. You're not the driver having to navigate the roads, being frustrated, your back aches because you're driving forever. You can sit on a train or sit on a bus and read a book, play a game, go to sleep. It gives you an opportunity to use that time better and enjoy your life more. Adaptation, on the other hand, recognizes that some level of climate change is already happening and that communities have to adjust to those impacts. This could mean building a seawall to protect coastal neighborhoods, redesigning cities to handle more intense rainfall, or developing crops that can tolerate higher temperatures and drought. In places like South Florida, adaptations already include raising roads, redesigning drainage systems, and adjusting building codes to handle stronger storms and higher tides. So, mitigation tries to slow climate change. Adaptation helps us live with the change already underway.